Today on The Occult Detective, we're going to talk about my history with unidentified flying objects.
Our planet against theirs. Scientists say there's no life on Mars. It figures, but I hope they're wrong.
So I've had a lifelong fascination with pretty much anything strange and unusual. My father used to bring me home magazines and cheap paperback books on all manner of subjects: UFOs, Bigfoot, the Bermuda Triangle, ancient aliens. If it was weird, I was into it. And I'm talking at a very, very young age. It was the early 70s, and that sort of stuff was everywhere. And I think my father had kind of an interest in those things also. It was all interconnected. Being fascinated, I always wanted to have a UFO experience. And so I spent a lot of time living out in the country, just stargazing and hoping to see something that was natural. Just to put everything in context, for one thing, I lived close to Grissom Air Force Base, which was originally a naval air base that was established in 1942, then kind of was taken over by the Air Force, and it was renamed Grissom after the death of Virgil Gus Grissom, the astronaut. The more interesting rumor, kind of urban legend that was circulating at that time was that after the events at Roswell, New Mexico, alien material was transported from there to Wright-Patterson and Hangar 18. The urban legend centered around that when they were transferring the aliens and materials from the crash from Roswell to Wright-Patterson and Hangar 18, they laid over at the Naval Air Base in Indiana. That's like in Cass and Miami County. And a friend of mine, very close friend, his father worked at Grissom Air Force Base, and he shared those stories with us. Was he pulling our legs? It's a great question. It wasn't just something that circulated in my little elementary school. This is something that, was spoken of in this whole area. Interesting, nonetheless. But again, that leads me to the fact that I was always curious, and my eyes were always on the sky. I did think that I know that I saw an unidentified flying object in the early 70s. It was a white light in the sky that kind of pulsed into yellow hues. No blinking lights on it at all. Nothing that would make me think it was an aircraft. And it was moving along the horizon, was making quick motions. Later, I came to believe it was most likely it was Venus, which is, kind of funny because it's, Project Blue Book. That was one of their favorite debunking reasons for people citing unidentified flying objects. So yes, it was unidentified, but as I grew older, reevaluating that situation, I came to believe that it was probably me seeing Venus on the horizon. Not long after that, I share a story about the Converse UFO Club. Now, that was an interesting situation. In the 5th grade, we were given the opportunity to take a math test. And if you scored perfect on the test, you were excused from math for a large chunk of the semester. It was a situation where they had kids that were kind of lagging behind, and they, being understaffed, they wanted to focus their attention on those kids, and they knew that the kids that were getting it would kind of be held back by this. So I took the test and passed. So along with, I think there were maybe 9 or 10 of us, we were given free pass to do whatever we wanted as a group. But we had to, at the end of the period, we had to make a presentation to the school based on whatever we decided that we were going to do, some type of project. So it was my idea that we study UFOs and come up with a working theory on what they were, where they were from, what their motivations were. And so I don't think anybody else really cared, so they went along with it. And we were given a classroom, an empty classroom on the upper floor of this beautiful old schoolhouse. And it was like a dream come true. It was very cinematic, to be honest. I mean, here you had this old classroom in a building that was built, in the, I think it was like 1914, something like that. And anyway, it was a very old building, and it was full of all these artifacts from the entire history of the school. And so, you had old flags and old desks, old chalkboards, all these sorts of things. So we utilized all these things. We made up like a little headquarters. So we had maps of the United States. We had, world maps. And I brought in my collection of UFO magazines and comic books and, National Enquirers and all that. I mean, I had a huge collection of these things. So we would sit and pore over all these articles, and we started putting stick pins in the mats. And we started developing a theory around all these sightings that we were finding in these magazines. And ultimately, what we came to was that the majority of sightings occurred around water. Not much of a stretch, considering that the planet's 2/3 covered in water. But that time period really stands out in my mind. It was it was just a fantastic experience, and I think the other students really enjoyed that time. We were given high marks for the presentation we made at the end of that semester. So that was an exciting time and very formative. Several years later, I had my first actual UFO experience, and that was in Florida. I was at Walt Disney World, and this was in the early 90s. It was late at night, and we were there getting ready to watch the firework event. And, I'm kind of looking up at the sky, and I hear somebody close to us say, "What's that?" So I'm looking in that direction, and then I saw it. It was a black triangle, no lights, so black against black, just kind of moving silently above us. And I was taken aback. Of course, black triangles was, that was a thing, right? That was people were talking about. It was making the rounds in the paranormal and UFO communities at the time. And there it was. I saw one. I was flabbergasted. And then, of course, years later, you find out about stealth technology and the stealth fighter, the stealth bomber, and you realize that that's probably what you were seeing, right? So, again, doubtful extraterrestrial in origin, but a legit experience. A couple years after that, I had the opportunity to investigate a crop circle. This was in the mid-90s, and outside of Converse in Howard County, an almost perfect circle in a cornfield was discovered. And of course, your immediate thought was, kids pulling pranks. This was in October. Was it related to Halloween in some fashion? But I did go out. I took measurements. There were other people that came out, officials that were looking into it. Purdue University was there and did soil samples. And there was low-level radiation detected in the soil there. So that was interesting. That's, to my knowledge, no other crop circle has appeared in that area since then. I did talk with local farmers and homeowners. Nobody witnessed any strange lights, no unnatural occurrences, and the circle just appeared overnight with no fanfare. So so that was pretty exciting. It meant a lot to us at the time. It certainly, there was a lot of other strange things going on at the time. The final event I want to share with you, in the early 2000s, my friends and I, we used to meet up late at night to go for bike rides, and just as a way to get some exercise. We were all getting older, and it's weird to think that we were getting older then, because that means we're a lot older now. But I came out of my house around 10 p.m., grabbed my bike, getting ready to set out, heading towards Little Pipe Creek Bridge on Water Street, when I noticed, coming from the south, a streak of light, comet-like almost, and then as it passed where I was, kind of towards the northeast, it exploded. Wow, huge fireball. And I heard nothing. There was no sound. And, this wasn't too long after 9/11. I didn't know what to think about it. So I rode to my friend's house in town, and we called 911. I explained the situation. me on hold. Then they came back and they said that somebody would meet me to interview me in 30 minutes and asked me to go to the Converse Town Hall, which I did. So I rode down there and I waited, and it was about 45 minutes later when somebody showed up, and I recounted to them what I had seen, and they shared with me that while they hadn't received other calls about the fireball, the explosion that I saw, they had been getting reports from people in nearby Sweetser and Swayze and other small towns in that area of black triangular shapes moving towards Converse. So they took all that information. I was thrilled that they shared that information with me, and so yeah, that was exciting. And then shortly after that, I don't know, maybe you're familiar with the Kokomo Hum. If you watched, I think of the UFO Hunters on, they did an episode about the Kokomo Hum. If you go to the Cyberling Mansion in Kokomo, Indiana, they have a portion of their museum that's dedicated to UFO sightings and the quote-unquote hum that was occurring then, that certainly people thought it was extraterrestrial or paranormal in nature. And of course, this whole area has been a hotbed of UFO sightings, of even Bigfoot sightings, strange wolf hybrid creatures. Look, there's a reason why I think that they placed Stranger Things in Indiana, right? Because Indiana is a hotbed of strange activity. Why and how, that's the mystery, right? And that's why I do what I do. If you have any interesting tales of extraterrestrial entities and visitations and abductions and all the manner of strangeness that goes on, especially if you're in the Indiana area, I'd love to hear about it. I'm always up for an adventure. It won't be long before I'll be back out there in the field. So I'd like to thank you for stopping by. As always, I appreciate you. And we'll talk again real soon. Take care of yourselves.